Immigration is turning out to be one of the more contested issues in this election. Surprise, surprise. When is immigration not an issue in a British election? The stuff of the allegations and the counter allegations changes, but it's always ready ammunition. This time, Prime Minister Sunak has invited this issue in, and it could turn out to be a self-damaging invitation.
Rishi Sunak has made a promise to stop the boats, as he puts it. In particular, then, he's talking about people coming across from France on small dinghies to claim asylum in the UK. He hasn't actually been able to do very much about that. Indeed, the crossings this year seem to be greater than the crossings last year at the same time of year. So it doesn't look as if anything the government has done, and in particular, obviously, its policy of sending people to Rwanda, which hasn't yet, of course, actually meant any flights taking off, has done much good.
That Rwanda plan got going before Rishi Sunak. Priti Patel signed the agreement as Home Secretary in the David Cameron government earlier. Since then, that plan and those flights have never quite taken off.
The government passed legislation very controversially to suggest that anyone claiming asylum in the UK irregularly would be sent for processing to Rwanda, a country in Africa. Not only would they have their claims processed there, but even if they were granted asylum there, they would actually have to stay in Rwanda rather than coming to the UK. So that is an incredibly harsh way of dealing with this problem, and in many ways an unfair way of dealing with it, but also a particularly expensive way of dealing with it. The government has already sent tens, if not hundreds of millions of pounds to Rwanda for a scheme that so far has only seen one person go there, and that person actually went there voluntarily rather than being obliged to do so by the government.
There is a quite decent looking detention center set up in Kigali, the Rwandan capital. The government hope is that the very thought of such a destination will put people off crossing over on those small boats. But really, it's not all about the small boats and those boats that get you into Dover eventually, and then to a detention center, and then on a flight to Rwanda. We are a long way from there. But immigration is an issue, legal and illegal.
Actually, the public, and in particular, as I say, those more right-wing voters, are concerned about immigration more generally. The net migration figure in this country is currently running at somewhere between 600,000 and 700,000 people. That is far more than was the case a decade or so ago. And it also means that the government's promise, and in particular, in some ways, the promise of those who advocated Brexit in 2016 to control our borders, seems actually to be a broken promise. So the government has tried over the last year or so to implement measures to try and get that net migration figure down, in particular, for example, preventing people coming with their families if they're coming to study. That will have some impact. There will be some impact as well as the number of people coming from Hong Kong and Ukraine goes down. So we would expect net migration to fall anyway. But as far as many voters are concerned, particularly those on the right, it's still far too high.
Just what would a Labour government do, or, as is looking more likely, will soon be called upon to do?
Well, Labour have made it very clear that they are not going to carry on with the Rwanda scheme. They regard it as an expensive gimmick that won't work. Their plan is to pour resources into recruiting more asylum officers in order to judge people's applications, and also to create a new ramped up border force in order to try and stop the boats. They also want to do more extensive cooperation with France, which of course is the country where many of these people are setting sail from. And they also want to increase the cooperation between, on the one hand, the Home Office, the Interior Ministry, if you like, and the Intelligence Service, in order to try and offset the role of the smuggling gangs who are responsible for so many of these people making that very perilous journey. And whether it's credible or not, I guess, depends on your political views.